90.7 KPFK, Los Angeles.
Russia, if you're listening.
Talk show, random, political, outrageous, philosophical, analytical, passionate, sunsets, roadkill cooking tips, open-minded, swordsman, bent, resolute, chocolate, bushwhacker, belt buckles, investigative, companion, fearless. Call in, piercing the cloud of mainstream entertainment. It's the Cary Harrison Files.
And it is the Cary Harrison Files. Welcome. Glad to have you here. We are also live streaming right now on Substack and YouTube, along with LinkedIn and everything else with a chip and a signal. You can simply Google Cary Harrison Substack or YouTube so we can stay connected when you arrive at your destination. You can also easily find us live at kpfk.net. Just go to kpfk.net to watch. Also, don't forget to sign up for our newsletter at caryharrison.com. That's C-A-R-Y, caryharrison.com. There you're going to get a transcript of this entire show, plus access to clips and stuff we simply no longer can do on the radio. Yes, we all live on the same planet, all at the same time. And that's our newsletter at caryharrison.com. Well, I don't have to tell you that people are scared right now. You can feel it in the air. You can feel it in the way people move, in the way their voices tighten when they talk about the future, if they dare talk about it at all, right? Anxiety, not just a passing state anymore. It seems to be the wallpaper of modern life. The headlines are screaming, the sirens are wailing, and somehow we're all supposed to just go about our business like nothing's on fire. Last week's Cary Harrison Files made that crystal clear. I heard it in your voices, your calls, the exhaustion, the uncertainty, the quiet plea hidden beneath the words. So what do? Where do we go from here? And it wasn't just about the economy or politics or the news cycle that seems hell-bent on making sure nobody gets a full night's sleep again. It was deeper than that. It was the creeping sense that we're more divided, more isolated, more alone than ever before. And that's why we have to talk about this. Because if we're not careful, fear is going to do what it always does. It's going to turn us against each other. It's going to make us suspicious. It'll make us cynical. It'll convince us that we're not our own people. And that's the real danger. Not just what's happening out there, but what it's doing to us in here. So today we're going to push back. We're going to talk about what actually holds us together, about what we can do right now, today, to make sure fear doesn't win. Because if last week proved anything, it's that none of us are alone as we think, as alone anyway. And that is the damn good place to start, right? So let's get into it. You know, happiness used to be simple. You got up, you worked hard, you avoided bankruptcy, and if you were lucky, you didn't die of scurvy before 40. And then we had antibiotics in the 1940s, so you actually got to make it longer than that. But somewhere along the line, we turned happiness into a full-time job, one that requires books and gurus and the occasional government hearing. Enter Stephanie Harrison, by the way, who's made it her life's work to untangle the mess we've made of this whole thing in recent years. Stephanie is the creator of the new Happy, which sounds like an over-the-counter supplement, but is, in fact, a philosophy backed by actual science. Yep. She's got a master's degree in positive psychology from Penn, has written for the Harvard Business Review, has been featured in the New York Times, Forbes, and places where people with very expensive coffee subscriptions congregate, even today. She's even testified before the government on, ready? Happiness. Which, let's be honest, is probably the most joyless place on earth. That would be Congress. Her new book, New Happy, has already become an international bestseller, and today she's here to tell us why everything we think we know about happiness is actually wrong, and why helping others might be the secret to saving ourselves. So let's jump into it. Stephanie Harrison, I want to welcome you to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Privileged to be with a fellow Harrison here.
Yes, we have the right last name, old school last name. And so I won't call you Harry, even though they probably called you that at school. I will call you Stephanie. And Stephanie, let's just cut to the chase. Why are so many people miserable when we've never had more ways to, let's say, optimize happiness?
I think because we have lost sight of the fact that happiness comes from our relationships. As you mentioned in your introduction, we are deeply disconnected from one another. And connection is the pathway to happiness. And unfortunately, this sort of truth has been really lost in the ways in which our society has warped this idea that happiness comes from, as you said, optimizing yourselves, pursuing more and more, getting certain possessions or achievements. And I think that in order for us to find our way out of this moment, we need to remember that true happiness comes from being connected to other people.
We talk about old happy versus new happy, or you do in your book. Is it just another way of saying that we've been doing it wrong all along?
It's, old happy is my term to try to collect a bunch of different ideas together into one to make it easier to talk about. And essentially, old happy teaches us that happiness is something that we get through perfecting ourselves, achieving more and more, and isolating ourselves from other people. And these messages are incredibly pervasive and have been conditioned into us through things like institutions and the media and our relationships with our families. And ultimately, what I'm striving to help people to do is realize that old happy doesn't work. We have reams and reams of scientific data that show that these pursuits don't make us feel good. They actually make us feel bad. And ultimately, they end up contributing to a lot of the bigger problems that our society is facing as well.
Ray, on the phone, and some others, we're going to go to you in just a minute. We'll take some calls here. Stephanie Harrison, obviously, people really want to have a glass of cool water in a parched desert of desperation, and I want to make sure that everyone's voices gets heard. We're living in different times. I mean, even a month ago, it was the old world. It was the old way. It was just, let's fine tune it. We still would go to Malibu. We still would spend $300 on a special yoga suit so we could meditate with our palms up to catch the proper vortices, as they are known to spin specifically in Malibu and other places, maybe Sedona, Arizona. I'm being sarcastic, but practical at the same time. This is what many of us believe. That's the old happy. That is the old way of finding it. We're now in a whole new thing of real disruption, where gravity may or may not be real, according to fill in the blank. And finding happiness, security, stability with each other is kind of the new goal, not just me feeling self-soothing. I'm going to self-soothe today. But I have to soothe my neighbors, or if they're unsoothed, I am never going to be soothed.
That's so beautifully said. I couldn't agree more. I think in the conversation that we've had as a society about self-care, we have forgotten that the best form of self-care is through caring for other people and our connections. And as you said, if we allow other people to be suffering, to be experiencing profound harm to their lives, to their own well-being, how can we say that we are happy and well on the inside? We can't permit these things to happen while also pursuing our own selfish pleasures. The two things are just fundamentally at odds. And so that doesn't mean that we can't do things that make us feel good or that bring us joy, or have the occasional bubble bath or spa day or whatever it is that helps you to feel like you're strong and capable. But we have to bring back the focus that we are a collective. We are deeply dependent upon one another, and we need each other. And that is the only way that we'll be able to really find the happiness that I think deep down all of us are searching for.
We're talking right now to Stephanie Harrison. She is creator of The New Happy, with a master's degree in positive psychology from Penn, written for the Harvard Business Review, been featured in the New York Times and Forbes, even testified before the government on happiness, back when the government might have been interested in such a topic. Her new book, New Happy, has already become an international bestseller today. Here to talk to us about everything, why we think everything we know about happiness is wrong, especially now, and helping others might be the secret to saving each other. Service, something that this country was founded on and something that we're looking to return to. All that in service of my show last week, where we found out that really people need to reconnect with each other and have community and fellowship. The surprising key to joy, how helping others boosts personal happiness. Like the way to get self-esteem is by doing esteemable things. For example, and you're not supposed to tell people this, you do it in top secret. When I go into Ralph's, for instance, which is one of the big grocery store chains here, and I see an older woman trying to load her groceries from the cart into her trunk, it's hard, it's difficult. I'll run up joyously like a spaniel wagging my tail, throw the groceries in her trunk, wish her a great day, and leave. I know she feels better. I feel great for like 3 hours, but I can't tell anybody. That's the key. I can't get credit for it. And it changes you.
Mm. It really does. There's so much science to back that up that acts of kindness, of course, they benefit, the lady who you're helping, the person who you're showing up for, but they also end up benefiting the giver and sometimes even more than the receiver. And so that description, your story, what scientists have discovered is that not only do you feel better for up to 4 weeks after doing an act of kindness, but it's something that persists and it helps you to change your identity into somebody who feels like they are worthy and they matter. And so much of this mental health crisis that we're experiencing in this country is, I believe, a result of people feeling like they don't have this deep sense of self-worth, that they're not able to contribute to lives in a meaningful way. And we don't have to start out by changing the world. We can just start out by trying to change somebody else's day, and we get the benefits that we're looking for.
Cary Harrison with you. This is the Cary Harrison Files. We're live streaming right now on Substack. If you are smart and have checked that out, what a great place to watch this along with YouTube. You can simply Google Cary Harrison Substack or YouTube so we can stay connected when you arrive at your destination, you car driver, you. You can also easily find us always at kpfk.net. Just go to kpfk.net. And don't forget to sign up for our newsletter at caryharrison.com. We're talking right now to Stephanie Harrison, best-selling author, and we're looking at ways to cope in the complicated and uncertain times in which we live. Notice how I even have to put that in code. I would love to really lay it out, but I'm not gonna. I think we all kind of get it right now. That's the other problem. Is normally if you go to a psychotherapist, they ask you to be specific and identify the real problem. But because we're so divided, to identify the real problem might put you on the enemies list of your neighbor. And we have to be mindful of that too, don't we?
Yeah. And this division that we're experiencing, we're sort of, I think that in many ways we don't realize how we're pulling ourselves apart from people, and how the more that we can come back to honoring our shared humanity and recognizing that all of us want to be happy, all of us want to experience the ability to have a good life, and there's nothing wrong with that. We should be celebrating our neighbors for what they do and their unique contributions to the world, and we should be trying to make the world safe for everybody to be able to experience those things.
Stephanie Harrison, you say that helping others is the key to joy. You mentioned the science behind that. How does that science compare to, say, retail therapy, which a lot of people, they do believe it works?
I would say that if you think about it like if you imagine a line graph, the spike of gratification that might ensue after handing over your credit card to buy something, sure, it might boost up really, really quickly, but it falls just as rapidly and it does not persist. Whereas if you're helping somebody, it's much more of a steady climb that ultimately gets you up higher and then keeps you there. So sure, buying something, maybe in the moment it gives you that quick hit of getting something you want, but we are so adaptable to any of our possessions or our achievements. And ultimately, that hedonistic high wears off very, very rapidly. And it's not a good or sustainable pathway to true happiness.
I have to admit, burnout. I have a severe version of it. It's like I feel like Sisyphus, not syphilis, but Sisyphus, pushing that boulder up the hill. We'd see you smile. It's video. Only to have that boulder roll back down and keep pushing it back up. I am one of hundreds of millions here, but I just happen to have the microphone, so I'm saying it. Burnout, practically a badge of honor in America. In other words, you worked hard and you're burnout. I'm burnout for 1,000 other reasons, like everyone else. What would be one simple shift that any of us can make today to start feeling better?
It's such a great question. And you're right. There are so many millions of people who are suffering from burnout. One of the things I think that people don't necessarily know about burnout is that one of the key components of it is cynicism. So believing that other people are bad, or that the future is irredeemably flawed, there's no hope for us. And so one of the things we can do to address our burnout, even if we can't maybe change our circumstances, is to try to cultivate a better sense of optimism, a sense of care, a sense of connection, a sense of looking for the good in other people. And when we do that, that can help to bolster us to both make the choices that work for us, but also to continue showing up for our communities in these difficult times.
Stephanie Harrison, I want to ask you a relevant question for today's times. And thank you. You're like so awesome, jumping back with really excellent, well-researched answers, which is why we have you on and not Mildred, who I could go find at Ralph's, who is very grateful for the groceries, but may not have any idea about this. If you had to give a TED Talk to a room full of billionaires, what would you tell them about the link between money and happiness?
I love that question. If only. If I could do that, it would be a dream come true. I would try to tell them that their hoarding of wealth is not only harming millions, billions of other people, but it's also harming themselves. And I would use the research to convince them that this pursuit is not only flawed, but it's also contributing to our broken world, and that there are so many better things that they can do rather than devote themselves to simply amassing more and more. And principally, they could be focusing on giving more and more.
We have some callers here at 818-985-5735. Those are your Harrison hotlines, 818-985-KPFK. And I think we have Ray to ask you a question. Ray, you're on the Cary Harrison Files.
Oh, hi. I want to wish everyone a happy day and a good morning. I wanted to express the fact that shows like yours are absolutely necessary in times like these, and it's really appreciated by everyone. I had a suggestion. You asked for suggestions last week, and you said you would take them today. So I would like to suggest that you invite these administrators, these government administrators, to explain on your show exactly what they're doing and to describe exactly what they have in mind, and in simple terms, explain their policies, their practices, and their decisions. And I would suggest that you challenge these people and invite them on the show.
Okay. Well, I love the idea. If they say yes, you know I will do it. And I appreciate your call, Ray. I think Ray speaks to the news cycle, basically a 24/7 anxiety machine. Really, we've all watched the news. We all watched it obsessively, C-SPAN, whatever, for years and years. But 3 minutes of it puts me into a backspin like crazy. How, Stephanie Harrison, do we cultivate real joy when the world, as Ray just pointed out, feels like it's absolutely on fire?
I want to acknowledge just how difficult it is in this situation that we are all in. And Ray, I absolutely love your idea, by the way. I think that there are a couple different practices and tools we can use. You know, the news is going to put us into a fight or flight state pretty quickly with everything going on right now. So I really recommend trying to limit your news consumption, or to engage in news sources like your show, Cary, that are devoted to helping people to feel more connected, not trying to stem them into outrage. The second thing we can do is to remember that we're not supposed to deal with this by ourselves. We're supposed to deal with it through connection. And that means coming together, having conversations, building those meaningful communities that support each other. And then finally, it's about devoting ourselves to a greater purpose. What can we do? You know, none of us are going to be able to save the country or the world by ourselves, but we can all do our small part to make a difference. We can all show up and try to support other people who are struggling and try to make a difference here. And if we can do each of those things, they can provide that level of support that allows us to not only cope, but ultimately even thrive.
Cary Harrison with you. This is the Cary Harrison Files. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter at caryharrison.com. Talking to Stephanie Harrison, whose surname is so awesome I can even pronounce it. She happens to be the creator of the new Happy got a master's degree in positive psychology from Penn, written for the Harvard Business Review, been featured in the New York Times, been featured in Forbes, even testified before the government on happiness, has a new book called New Happy. And you testified before Congress on happiness. I mean, this is just, I don't know whether to smile or clutch the pearls that I'm not wearing, but did they actually listen, or were they just giving tax breaks?
It was actually for the government of California specifically. So looking at their commission on happiness, and they did listen. They were very engaged and very supportive. I think that if I was to be speaking in front of Congress, especially right now, we'd be having a very different conversation. And ultimately, there is so much misinformation out there about happiness. So many people who have been led astray thinking that power or domination or the the pursuit of wealth and status are going to make you happy. And unfortunately, a lot of that seems to be playing out in many ways in the public sphere now too.
Let's go next to Carlos in Carson. You're on the Cary Harrison Files with Stephanie Harrison and me, Cary Harrison.
Good morning, both Harrisons. Listen, I can identify with what Stephanie's saying about randomly giving, because that enhances your humanity and your sense of self-worth. I love to go to Tijuana to the border and give money to all these poor kids begging on the streets and all those people distributing clothes. And particularly, I go over there to contribute money for people who have cancer and cannot afford insurance, surgery, things like that. And, that gives me a great sense of humanity, a sense of being, and a reason for living. At my age, sometimes you need reasons for living, But I got a question for Stephanie. You mentioned the collective, being part of the collective. Now, doesn't that take away from your sense of being an individual? Like, I look at our DEI policies, diversity, inclusion, and all this, but that also merges you, and you become part of the big collective, and that has to me, that entails in a way a sense of loosening your cultural identity, your traditions, things like that, when you just submerge to the collective. I mean, I'm grappling with that question. What do you say?
Thank you so much, Carlos, for your call. Good one, Stephanie.
It's a really great question, Carlos. And first of all, thank you so much for being the person you are, who shows up to give and make a difference in people's lives. We need more people like you. And I had goosebumps listening to you talk about it. So thank you so much. I think that when we think about the collective is at its strongest when every individual has a deep sense of who they uniquely are. And that is comprised of so many different elements, from their cultural heritage to their background, to the life experiences they've had, to their unique talents. And the more that we actually find a use in the collective for our individual selves, the more our individuality actually strengthens, while at the same time building greater connectedness to other people. So it's a little bit of a paradox, but the more that we devote ourselves to doing good in the world in this way, the more we actually build a stronger sense of individual self. And so I think, Carlos, it's totally natural to struggle with that because it feels like they're at odds. But in fact, the two things are mutually supportive of one another. So as you give, you become more of you, Carlos, and then that equips you to give even more.
Coming up in just a couple of minutes, we're going to look at more tools and tips on how to calm our body, our mind, our spirit, raise our immune system during these challenging times. We're going to explore research findings culled from scientific evidence, intuitive information, and what's known as divine connection, which makes our next guest coming up a highly respected speaker, lecturer, and medical consultant worldwide. And that's coming up in about 5 minutes. Right now, we're talking to Stephanie Harrison, creator of The New Happy, master's degree in positive psychology from Penn, written for the Harvard Business Review, been featured in the New York Times and Forbes, testified before the previous government on happiness when there was the potential for such a thing. God, here I am. Like, what do I do? And you've already told me what to do, but do I need an intervention? What is the intervention that me and others need to snap out of this in the middle of a day?
You don't need an intervention. You're doing everything right. You are speaking how you're feeling and you're giving voice to people who feel the same way. So you're actually doing a profound service.
So you have bad days, Stephanie Harrison. And when you do, what's your go-to move when happiness might feel a little out of reach?
Not to sort of say the same thing over and over again, but my little trick is that when I'm having a bad day, I go out and try and help somebody else who's having a worse day than me. And it always works. It has never failed me, at least to bring me back to myself, and most of the time to help me find a sense of joy and a sense of peace. I think too often it's really easy when you're having a bad day to sort of spiral into yourself and get caught in ruminating thoughts or anxiety or all that kind of stuff. And looking outside of ourselves is a way to really quickly break that cycle.
I do love the idea of ruminating thoughts, a ruminant like a cow, where you chew it, swallow it, throw it back up in your mouth, chew it again, swallow it, repeat, ruminating thoughts. That's exactly what it is, isn't it? It's
Oh my gosh, that's perfect.
Well, I want to thank you, and thank you for writing this marvelous book. It is the soothing emollient to these particularly troubled times in which we live. And if we're not putting that flashlight out on the path of at least hope and promise, and somebody's got your back, that's really what this is. Somebody's got your back. If I have my neighbor's back, I promise you, they will give me that cup of sugar when I want it. You get what you give. Golden rule. I don't know what it is. Maybe we forgot about it, but this is the time when really practicing it is going to matter. And I appreciate your having put this together in a go-to manual for all of us.
Thank you so much. You're so kind, and it's been such a joy to talk to you.
Thank you. Well, thank you for such a good interview. And I know this is one of your better ones. You can write that down. Thank you so much. Cary Harrison with you. This is the Cary Harrison Files. That was Stephanie Harrison. Her new book is called New Happy. Coming up, like I said, tools and tips on how to calm our body, our mind, our spirit, raise our immune system during these challenging times. We're going to explore the research findings culled from scientific evidence, intuitive information, and divine connection, which makes our next guest a highly respected speaker. Some of you may have heard of him. He's kind of a big deal in this world. He's a lecturer, a medical consultant worldwide, and that's coming up in just a tick.
Listen, well, it's still legal.
The Cary Harrison Files. CaryHarrison.com.
This pussy grabs back.
The Cary Harrison Files. CaryHarrison.com.
And it is the Cary Harrison Files. Cary Harrison here with you. Glad to be with you as we continue to respond and explore to the various different things that you're asking for. This is one of the components. Obviously, I will try to bring on the grown-ups as they're willing to appear before you. And we'll get down to some imaginary plot of the play other than the one we actually know what's going on. Right now, we're streaming on Substack and YouTube. You can simply Google Cary Harrison Substack or YouTube so we can stay connected when you arrive at your destination. You can also easily find us live at kpfk.net. Just go to kpfk.net and don't forget to sign up for our newsletter at caryharrison.com. There you're going to get a transcript of the entire show plus access to clips and stuff that we no longer can do on the radio. That is the reality of today's times, which is why we speak in code a whole lot suddenly. Well, you don't need me to tell you that civilization's doing just fine. Everyone's calm, everyone's rational, and everyone is in perfect mental health, as we just learned. The news is it's a soothing balm. Social media is a utopia of kindness. And the modern diet, packed with more chemicals than a science lab, is definitely not rewiring our brains for permanent hysteria. Yeah, it's exactly as the founding fathers had intended. Not to mention the services many people rely on to ensure a safer food supply, like the FDA is going to be cut by 3,500 employees, the CDC by 2,400 employees, the National Institutes of Health by 1,200, and Medicare by 300, all being rebuilt by Bobby Kennedy into a brand new agency, no kidding, called AHA. I know. If you haven't heard of it, you're laughing, or some variant of that. Seriously, it's called AHA, AHA, or the Administration for Healthy America. AHA. That's how they're pronouncing it. That's how he's pronouncing it. You know, he's way too educated and Ivy League to come up with such a stupid acronym. So clearly it was handed to him. He was reading it off a teleprompter. It was a little tough to watch because he, you know, like him or not, he's a sophisticated creature. But it is called AHA. Meanwhile, regular people, well, they don't seem calmed by this soothing governmentally emollient of downsizing and comedy rebranding. AHA. Anxiety continues to spin. Depression, general existential dread have become more common than the madness out of DC. And people are unraveling faster than a cheap sweater. And the world, as usual, is happy to pour gasoline right on that fire. So you and I are stressed. We're exhausted. We're about 2 breaking news alerts away from spontaneous combustion. But happily, we just learned some of the tricks of the trade. Helping others, being of service is what we need to do to find that antidote to our collective breakdown. I'm going to open up the phones because what you have to say and what you think matters. What are you doing to cope and deal? How are you helping people? Because I know you are. I mean, I can hear listen, our callers are passionate. Let's face this is not like AM radio. Hello? No. Passionate. So you're out there doing the right stuff. I want to know what it is that you're doing and how can you help cue somebody else in how to break out of their emotional constipation. 818-985-KPFK. Those are your Harrison hotlines. 818-985-5735. 818-985-KPFK. 818-985-5735. We're waiting for Dr. Christopher Macklin, who is a rock star. He may be having issues with the software at the moment. And when he gets here, we're going to bring him on. But in the meantime, I want to hear from you at 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735, and get your take on what you're doing to cope. And I'll tell you, as I said earlier, I am going out of my mind. I have been doing this for years. You know, I used to do Air America for a number of years. I've done rock and roll radio. I was CBS News in Chicago. I literally lived in a swamp of bad news. And somehow I could separate myself from it. It was hard to look at. It was hard to appreciate how real it was. But I guess this is so close to home now that I can't extricate myself from it as some intellectual proposition where I'm just pointing out colors spray painted on a wall. I am the wall and I am the spray paint at the same time. And I think we all feel the same. Let's go to Harold in Redlands. You're on the Cary Harrison Files. Welcome.
Close to home now that I can't extricate myself from it as some intellectual
Turn your radio down, please. Turn your radio down.
And I am.
Turn your radio. Okay, great. Harold, you're on.
Oh, good morning, and I love your show. And there are some things that you just have to learn the hard way. And right now, we are learning a whole new way of living amongst each other when you find out your neighbor's the one who's been breaking into your house. So what do? When you find out a friend you thought for the last 5 years was the one that's been breaking into your property, what do?
Well, I mean, you mean emotionally, what do? Clearly, you call the cops because you need that to stop. That will at least stop it at that point. But it's the betrayal and the violation that you're talking about, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's tough because in this era that you and I are living in, I generally feel on a daily basis unsafe. I feel unsafe because I might fit into a category called DEI. I'd never heard of that term until like 3 months ago. But let's just say I check a box occasionally called other. I feel unsafe during these times, and I feel betrayed by my own country. But then when my neighbors are doing that too, and this is the mission creep that we saw in World War II in various countries, whether it was Spain under Franco, whether it was Italy under Mussolini, whether it was Germany under you-know-who. When the neighbors turn on the neighbors, that's when that government's power is secure. So you and I, apart from your bad situation, but just generally speaking, we need to do what we can to make sure that we're all working together, not against each other. Because the only buttress I have, the only wall I have, the only firewall I have between something bad happening is being able to trust my neighbors. And you've lost that trust in your neighbor, but then they're, I was going to say a-hole, but I'll say something nicer, but I won't. That's turns out what they are. But I think you could deal with that in some way. Okay, well, there it is. Thank you, Harold. I appreciate it, and I'm wishing you all the best. Definitely call the cops because you want that to stop and not continue. But also, don't think that suddenly all your neighbors are like that. They're not. Somebody is an opportunist. There will always be a Dick Cheney in the room. There'll always be a Rumsfeld. There'll always be a whoever, whatever name you might want to say that might be available publicly these days. There will always be one of them in the room. And here we are. This is kind of an interesting life lesson to be mindful of that. Now we know what that looks like. So are we going to be aware of it? Or are we just going to bleach a red flag white or pink? Like I can deal with a pink flag. I'll just bleach it until it's pink and it's not a red flag. It was a red flag before you applied bleach. It is not suddenly an unred flag. It is not a non-red flag. It is a red flag bleached. It is still a red flag. So these are some of the life lessons we learn is, as Maya Angelou taught us, if somebody tells you who they are, believe them. Right? Like you go on a date and somebody says, well, I'm not monogamous and I'm this and I'm that. And I drink too much and I smoke a lot of weed and whatever. And you laugh and dismiss it. Like we're just going to overlook all of that because they smell good. They look good. They're sexy. They've got great table manners. Look, they picked up the berry fork. They knew the tiniest fork on the table, when to pick that up with the right course meal, all the rest of it. They're just being, diminutive. They're just trying to be humble in front of me. No. When people tell you who they are, believe them. When you're on a date with someone, in the first 20 minutes, you're going to know everything you ever need to know if you're paying attention. They're going to reveal all kinds of stuff to you, just in nuance, in inflection, in comments, in political positions. Just know this is the very best moment you are ever going to have with that person. The first 20 minutes of courtship, they're giving you their A game best behavior. Best behavior. 3 months later, they've relaxed. Oh, yeah. The real stuff comes out and you go, I don't know what happened. That's because you didn't pay attention in the first 20 minutes. Lines are still open at 818-985-KPFK. Your Harrison hotlines, 818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735. Let's go to Mike in Leanna Valley. Mike, you're on the Cary Harrison Files.
Hello. I was, really kind of, feeling bad and stuff about how the election went on. So I got this book. It's called Trump on the Couch by Justin A. Frank, MD. And he goes inside the mind of the president, and that's helped me a lot to understand where this man's coming from.
Is that the
So
same?
it's helping
Did
me
he do?
to understand from a psychological point of view what the president's state of mind is.
Is that the same author who did Bush on the Couch back in 2006?
And Obama also, yes.
Yes. Invaluable books. Invaluable. What did you learn? Because
it's almost like a Bible. I want to carry it around with me and show people it. I really do.
Can you give us can you give us a little bit of a synthesis?
I'm novice, but I mean, the way that I understand the way the book goes is taking him back to his childhood, and that's I'm relating myself and my son's childhood too. So it's helping me to be able to communicate with him and try to understand the president. I mean, that's the take I have on it.
I love that angle. It's like talking to a 3-year-old. Once you can make peace with that, it works. Well, what a great call, my friend. I do thank you, Mike. Awesome call. Thank you. And thank you.
My friend.
Thank you, my friend. And thank you for sharing that book. We're going to pause for a second. 818-985-KPFK. Those are your Harrison hotlines. We have Leo in Grand Terrace coming up and some others at 818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK. This is the Cary Harrison Files.
Smells like fish. Tastes like chocolate.
It's the Cary Harrison Files. CaryHarrison.com.
Listen, well, it's still legal.
The Cary Harrison Files. CaryHarrison.com.
And it is the Cary Harrison Files. Glad to have you with us. Don't forget, you can sign up for our newsletter at CaryHarrison.com. I am going to be populating the website, as I said I would, with more stuff, where to go, who's doing what, when, and where, as I can. One-man band nowadays, these days, no longer the days. By the way, a message pops up on YouTube from KBM says, I noticed my mind and anxiety calmed after taking an action and making plans to take action in a scheduled way. Lots of meditation, pause, and prayer too. Thank you, Keith. And lots of desserts. So lots of ways. You could call in on the phone, which I love, at 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735, or do it the old-fashioned or the new-fashioned digital way by simply sending a comment on our live stream on YouTube or anything else with a chip and a signal. As you know, we're live streaming right now on Substack and YouTube. Simply Google Cary Harrison Substack or YouTube, and that way we stay connected when you arrive at your destination. Or you can just go to kpfk.net, kpfk.net. Let's go to Leo in Grand Terrace. Leo, you're on the Cary Harrison Files.
Good morning. Buenos dias. Hello.
Buenos dias.
Hey, all right, Cary. Thanks for your show. Appreciate it.
Well, glad to have you aboard, my friend. Go ahead.
Yes. You were saying, what are we doing to try to change what's going on over there in the middle of the White House? I'm over here calling up people, sending out messages so that they called the switchboard at the Capitol, 202-224-3121. That's one of the things. And other things that I've been trying to do is also mention to my friends and associates about certain things that are part of the democracy that we live in, and that's the Constitution. And I try to tell them about looking up and rereading the preamble. And just by chance, the preamble kind of came to mind one day when I was looking through an American Legion calendar one day, Cary, and it stated on the September 17th is supposed to be Constitution Day. Of all things. And then, Cary, down a few months later, on December 15th, it's supposed to be the Bill of Rights Day, Cary. And then another thing I wanted to mention to people to maybe do a rally around the monument. In 1991, Mayor Tom Bradley erected a monument dedicated to the Bill of Rights on the south lawn of the City Hall on Main Street at First Street corner. And so that's what I've been doing. And if you go up from Spring Street, Main Street, to Grand Street, where the courthouse is, between Grand Street and Hill Street, you'll find another monument that it's all in writing, the Emancipation Proclamation Monument. So anyway, Cary, I'm out there doing my patriotic duty. I'm a Vietnam vet, and I appreciate what you've been doing for us, brother, giving us information when you first started off your show. I was listening in, man. Thank you so much. I salute you, my friend.
I salute you, my friend, and thank you so much. And I won't say something dumb like thank you for your service, because that's just implied, but thank you for showing up despite recent things that are going to affect your world as a vet. We all feel powerless. Vets feel powerless. Civilians feel power. I mean, all of us are taking a hit in every possible direction. We're told it's for our benefit. We haven't been exactly told exactly how that benefit is supposed to happen, which is why somebody earlier called in and said, bring on the grown-ups and have them explain that. Boy, we all would love to see that happen. And maybe we'll be lucky and maybe that will happen. Otherwise, I don't know. But at least if we can stay sane, we can do something. And that's kind of the key, and not turn on each other. And I can't stress that enough, because that is the plan. Just like we saw in the old days, 80 years ago, where kids were taught at school to rat on their parents. If your parents are talking about unclean thoughts, thought crime, Orwellian thought crime, if they're planning something or they're not playing along, just let us know. We'll help your parents. And we all know how that help turned out. So this is an opportunity for all of us to not be in denial, but to accept it is what it is. That doesn't mean you have to like it. Acceptance does not mean approval. Acceptance does not mean a rubber stamp. Acceptance just means whatever is happening is actually happening. Now what? And the now what is how to cope. And when you cope, you can do stuff and you can stay sane and you can maybe find a livable life amidst all of this, still to be discovered and still to be searched out, sought out. It's only been, a month and a half or so. And here we are making these initial steps together. I want to acknowledge and thank, by the way, Renee Yawarski. She is our beautiful, fabulous, brilliant Rhodes Scholar director based in New York, handling the video streaming here, which you can see at Substack or on our YouTube channel or on our KPFK Facebook page, anywhere. She is just beyond awesome. And without her, I really would not be able to pull this off alone. Also, I want to thank Gary Baca at KPFK, who's running the board, taking your calls and making sure that you can get on the air at 818-985-5735, 818-985-5735, 818-985-5735. And we're talking about what it is you can do, what you have been doing. Just as we've heard from, I'm going to go back to some of these names here, Leo in Grand Terrace, from Mike in Leanna Valley, from Harold in Redlands, back. Carlos in Carson, I can keep going back. But from different people that are suiting up and showing up and finding creative ways to be able to deal with stuff and be useful and positive. And that, I think, is the plot of the play. In the old world, there were ways that we all knew we could contribute. We had certain and specific talents. We would perform those, and it would make a difference, and it would change things. Now, it's different. Your talents of the old world might not fit the new world, but what you know through those talents, or those talents rebuilt, redesigned, redeployed, can make a difference. If all you can do is make somebody feel better, by them feeling better, I'm going to make an analogy here. When you're on an airplane, they tell you 100 million times, if the oxygen mask drops from the cabin, put it on yourself first, not the kid sitting next to you. Your intuition is, oh, no. That oxygen mask falls. I'm going to slap it on the face of that kid right next to me because he's a kid. He can't reach it. If he doesn't get the oxygen, he's going to croak. Well, great. Here's why they want you to put it on the kid first. You slap it on the kid. He starts breathing. You suffocate. You fall back. You let go of the mask. The mask then goes back into free fall, swinging on its clear plastic cord or tube. The kid can't reach it. He wouldn't know what to do with it anyway. And now 2 people have died. That's why you put it on you first. So I'm recommending that you practice self-care to the best of your ability so that you can be of service to your neighbors, your friends, the people that you love, the people that love you, because they're so stressed already that trying to manage you is going to be a big problem. So I'm going to give you a mantra. This is so weird because I've never done this before. I mean, I've never used radio this way. If you've been with me for years, one place or another, I just really don't do this stuff. But these are really unusual times. This is a mantra that I want you to remember. Write it down if you can. I'll put it in the newsletter, which you can get at caryharrison.com, Cary. And it's a really great mantra, and it's very important for all of us. Here it is. No matter what happens, I'm going to take care of myself. I always have, and I always will. I'll say it a few times, and let me just explain what that means. It's not a self-centered act. It's not, I'm just going to take care of me and forget you. Not that at all. It's to be available, to be useful in the world, to be useful to others, for others, to be able to find comfort and learn what you know. You have to be available for that. No matter what happens, I'm going to take care of myself. I always have, and I always will. Say it one more time. No matter what happens, I'm going to take care of myself. I always have, and I always will. Let's go quickly to Gail in Santa Monica. You're on the Cary Harrison Files. Welcome. Gail.
Hello. Thank you for everything you're doing, Cary. I want to put in a plea to my fellow humans, especially in the United States, to please don't forget the fight to get rid of DeJoy, the Postmaster General. This is serious because he has, just give you one horror thing he's done, beside the effort to slow down the post office, to try and turn it into a privatized thing. There is the most effective direct line.
I'm sorry to jump in, Gail, but I believe I read yesterday that he's resigning. I may be wrong, but I think I saw that.
I hope you're right, but his practices are in place.
Yeah.
And my understanding is that the latest is through the Project 2025,
right?
That horrible project. The aim is to keep going in the DeJoy direction, to slow it down until it becomes so ineffective in their imagination that everyone will say, oh, well, let's just privatize it. This isn't working.
To your point, because if people don't know about this, he plucked 10,000 physical blue metal mailboxes out of the ground in neighborhoods and zip codes where the wrong voting party was concentrated in population. So that was his invention, and that's in play. I am so sorry we are out of time, Gail. Thank you so much for your call. And Donna is waiting online. Thank you. I'm so sorry, Donna. Let's get you next week. Please call back. Everybody else teed up. Very, very grateful. Love your calls. Please get the newsletter. Stay in touch with me. Talk to me. I'm going to start doing Ask Me Anything videos during the middle of the week, other stuff, so that we can stay connected and help each other survive this thing and learn. Like, let's share everything we've ever learned in life. This is the time to do that, not hold it as a secret project, okay? Cary Harrison with you. You can get the newsletter at caryharrison.com. Very much appreciate it. And I look forward, my friends, to seeing you next Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, here on the Cary Harrison Files.
Smells like fish. Tastes like chocolate.
It's the Cary Harrison Files. CaryHarrison.com.